The glitz and glamour of Hollywood have always rested on a fragile foundation of carefully constructed illusions, where the magic presented on the silver screen often masks a far more complex, chaotic, and volatile reality behind the scenes. For decades, audiences have been captivated not just by the stories unspooling in the dark of a movie theater, but by the whispers, the rivalries, and the unseen human friction that occurs when the cameras stop rolling and the directors yell cut. There is an undeniable fascination with the pressure cooker environment of a major motion picture set, a place where immense financial stakes, towering creative egos, and intense emotional investment collide over months of exhausting production schedules. When a project transitions from a mere artistic endeavor into a cultural lightning rod, the line between marketing and genuine real-world drama begins to blur in ways that can completely overshadow the work itself. This phenomenon is amplified exponentially in our modern media landscape, where every sideways glance, every missed public appearance, and every cryptic social media post is dissected by millions of amateur detectives around the globe. The public appetite for behind-the-scenes intrigue often surpasses the desire for the narrative itself, creating an ecosystem where a film can become a battlefield long before it ever reaches a single cinema screen. This is the story of a project that promised to be a defining psychological thriller of its era, but instead became a textbook case of how modern myth-making, internet speculation, and personal relationships can converge to create a perfect storm of controversy in an era dominated by instantaneous digital commentary and a relentless 24-hour news cycle. The rollout of a high-profile feature film is no longer a controlled corporate narrative managed entirely by studio publicists and red carpet orchestrators. Instead, public perception is shaped in real time by an interconnected web of forums, tabloid reporting, and viral social media trends that feed upon any hint of discord or instability within a production. A single anonymous tip or a vaguely sourced rumor can rapidly snowball into an undeniable internet phenomenon, transforming a creative vision into a public spectacle that demands constant management and defense. Navigating this treacherous landscape requires a delicate balance of silence and strategy, as any attempt to address the growing noise risks feeding the very beast a filmmaker hopes to quiet. As we delve deeper into this labyrinth of industry secrets and public fascination, it becomes clear how easily the artistic merit of a project can be hijacked by external narratives, reminding us of the immense stakes involved in bringing a story to life. If you find yourself captivated by the intricate intersections of cinematic art and real-world human drama, consider taking a moment to subscribe to this channel, ensuring you never miss our deep dives into the hidden stories that shape our cultural landscape. The modern cultural landscape thrives on these narratives of conflict, often valuing the drama surrounding the creation of art over the final piece of art itself. A reality that directors and actors must confront with every new venture they undertake under the glaring spotlight of global fame. The stage for this particular modern saga was set when a highly talented and widely respected actress decided to step behind the camera for her second major directorial effort, carrying with her the immense weight of critical expectation and public scrutiny. Having already achieved significant acclaim with a debut feature that was praised for its sharp wit, structural precision, and authentic representation of youth culture, she was suddenly positioned as one of the most promising and visionary filmmakers of her generation. Her sophomore project was not just another assignment, it was meant to be a grand statement of artistic maturity, a complex psychological thriller designed to challenge societal norms and explore the darker undertones of control, conformity, and gender dynamics. The premise itself was tantalizing, centered around an idyllic, pristine, and entirely isolated mid-century utopian community tucked away in the American desert, where everything appeared to be completely perfect on the surface. Within this immaculate environment, a group of devoted wives lived lives of ultimate domestic luxury, completely unaware of the true nature of the sinister corporate experiments being conducted by their husbands' mysterious employers. It was a narrative deeply rooted in the traditions of classic psychological cinema, drawing inspiration from iconic stories of suburban dread and existential claustrophobia, and it promised to deliver a thought-provoking, visually stunning examination of patriarchal power structures and hidden truths to bring such an ambitious and layered vision to life. The production required a cast that possessed not only exceptional acting caliber, but also the kind of massive cultural presence that could draw mainstream global attention to an independent-minded thriller. The director successfully secured a brilliant young actress who had rapidly established herself as an elite powerhouse of contemporary cinema, a performer renowned for her raw emotional depth, fierce independence, and an uncanny ability to anchor complex, unsettling narratives with absolute conviction. Joining her as the male lead was a global musical phenomenon, an individual whose transition from international pop stardom to serious cinematic acting was already one of the most heavily discussed career moves in the entire entertainment industry. The convergence of these distinct creative forces, a rising visionary director, a universally lauded acting prodigy, and a transcendent global superstar, created an immediate explosion of public interest and high-stakes anticipation. From the moment pre-production began, the project was enveloped in an atmosphere of intense curiosity, with fans and industry insiders alike eager to see how this potent mix of intense talent and unparalleled celebrity would translate onto the screen. It was an environment ripe for artistic triumph, but it was also an incredibly volatile mix, where the immense pressures of Hollywood prestige and global fandom could easily distort the creative process and alter the dynamics of everyone involved. However, as the intensive filming schedule got underway in the isolated desert locations, the initial narrative of a harmonious, high-concept creative collaboration began to subtly shift within the industry's underground whisper networks. Long before any official footage was released or any promotional campaigns were launched, strange murmurs and unverified reports began to leak from the set, hinting at growing tensions and ideological friction among the key creative figures. The pristine, orderly facade of the fictional mid-century utopia being captured on film seemed to be mirrored by an increasingly complex and shrouded reality behind the scenes, where the personal lives of the creators were becoming inextricably intertwined with the professional demands of the production. Whispers of creative disagreements, shifting schedules, and unexpected interpersonal dynamics began to circulate among industry insiders, gradually making their way onto public internet forums where they were rapidly amplified and reinterpreted by millions. What was initially conceived as a focused, high-stakes cinematic achievement was slowly being reframed by the public imagination as a breeding ground for behind-the-scenes drama, setting the foundation for a controversy that would eventually threaten to overshadow years of hard work. The atmosphere surrounding the film was becoming heavy with anticipation and unspoken conflict, leading the world to wonder what exactly was transpiring behind the closed doors of this highly secretive and fiercely protected Hollywood production. The whispers that had quietly circulated within the isolated desert production camps soon metastasized into a raging wildfire of public speculation, turning the promotional rollout of the film into a tense psychological drama of its own. At the heart of this media firestorm were persistent reports of an intense interpersonal breakdown between the visionary director and her brilliant young lead actress. Two powerhouse creative minds whose collaboration was meant to be the driving force behind the thriller. As the public tried to decode the exact origins of this supposed fallout, tabloid journalists and online investigators began pointing toward a deeply complicated web of shifting personal relationships that occurred during the production. Specifically, mainstream entertainment outlets began reporting that the tension was rooted in the director's burgeoning romantic relationship with her new male lead, the international music icon who had stepped into the film's central male role. Speculation intensified with claims that the lead actress felt deeply uncomfortable and professional boundaries were crossed on set, allegedly because the filmmaker began hooking up with the charismatic pop singer while she was still publicly understood to be engaged to her longtime partner, a beloved and prominent television comedy star. This timeline of events became a focal point for internet scrutiny, creating a narrative that the creative focus of the set had been profoundly compromised by real-life romance as the weeks rolled on. The allegations grew increasingly specific and hostile, threatening to permanently stain the reputation of the production. Anonymous insiders leaked claims to major entertainment publications, asserting that the professional dynamic on set had devolved to the point where the director and her star performer engaged in an explosive, screaming match in front of the crew. According to these unverified accounts, the lead actress became utterly fed up with what was described as frequent, unexplained absences by the director, who would supposedly disappear into the shadows of the production with her new pop star boyfriend, leaving the rest of the cast and crew stranded to figure out complex scenes on their own. The internet devoured these claims, constructing a vivid picture of an chaotic, unprofessional workspace where personal indulgence came at the expense of artistic leadership. Adding immense fuel to this raging fire was a highly controversial leaked video sent by the director to actor Shia LaBeouf during the movie's early rehearsal period, which found its way onto public platforms. In the video, the director could be heard referring to her lead actress with the patronizing moniker Miss Flo, suggesting that the young star needed a wake-up call to fully commit to the project, and phrasing that the public immediately interpreted as concrete. Undeniable evidence of an underlying condescension and deep-seated bitterness between the two women. The situation was further complicated by the immense public profiles of everyone involved, which ensured that the off-camera narrative completely drowned out the actual themes of the movie itself. Audiences were no longer talking about a gripping story concerning women unknowingly subjected to a virtual reality prison where they were forced into traditional 1950s housewifery instead. They were entirely focused on the alleged real-world power struggle unfolding on the red carpets. The toxic rumors contaminated not just the initial marketing campaign, but act as a heavy, inescapable shadow that followed the director and her new musician partner around for the entirety of their relationship, affecting their public appearances and turning every joint outing into a paparazzi battleground. Behind closed doors, the director was facing immense corporate pressure as well, navigating a corporate studio system that was terrified of losing its multi-million-dollar investment to a tabloid scandal. She would later reveal that during the height of the media frenzy, she was explicitly advised by studio executives and public relations teams to stay completely silent, to hide her frustrations, and to avoid defending herself against the tidal wave of bad press. She acquiesced to this rigid strategy at the time, putting on a brave face for the cameras, a decision she would ultimately come to deeply regret as she watched the narrative spiral completely out of her control, leaving her unable to correct the record while her professional ethics were systematically picked apart by millions of anonymous critics. This toxic atmosphere reached its absolute boiling point on the global stage of the Venice International Film Festival, where the project was scheduled to make its prestigious world premiere. The highly anticipated event, which should have been a triumphant celebration of cinematic achievement, instead felt like a masterclass in psychological warfare and strategic evasion. The tension was palpable the moment the cast arrived on the historic Italian island, with hundreds of cameras tracking every single movement, glance, and distance between the actors. The narrative of a deep rift seemed to be confirmed in the eyes of the public when the lead actress famously skipped the traditional press conference for the movie, citing her intense filming obligations on a massive sci-fi sequel across the world. Left to face the pack of hungry reporters alone, the director attempted to execute a flawless exercise in public relations damage control, using her time at the microphone to praise her absent star as an absolute force of nature and expressing immense gratitude that she could even attend the evening screening despite her chaotic schedule. Yet, when directly confronted by a reporter asking her to clear the air once and for all regarding the endless rumors of a falling out, the director deflected the question with practiced poise, asserting that the internet simply feeds itself and that she felt no desire to contribute to an ecosystem that was already sufficiently well-nourished. This calculated silence, intended to starve the media beast, only seemed to validate the public's suspicions, ensuring that the tension surrounding the film reached an unprecedented historic peak. As the dust slowly began to settle from the chaotic promotional circus and the public premiere of the film, the true human cost of this relentless media storm became increasingly apparent for all those who had been caught up in its center. The director, having weathered years of intense public scrutiny, eventually reached a breaking point where she felt an absolute necessity to break her long enforced silence and directly confront the toxic rumors that had so heavily contaminated the rollout of her artistic creation. Looking back on the immense pressure cooker of that period, she forcefully and specifically denied the persistent, damaging claim that she and her brilliant lead actress had ever engaged in an explosive screaming match on the set of the thriller. In candid retrospective interviews, she made it completely clear that she had never allowed a screaming match to occur on any set she had ever run. Nor was she ever unavailable or absent due to her private romantic life during the demanding production schedule. She expressed a profound, deep-seated resentment toward the corporate studio advice that had initially forced her to remain completely silent and just go out there and smile while her professional reputation was being systematically dismantled by anonymous sources. noting that the painful experience taught her a definitive lesson about how she wants to handle her leadership and her voice going forward. The narrative of a toxic and chaotic workspace was also vigorously challenged by the very people who actually spent every single day working on the production. Far away from the sensationalized headlines of the internet, in an unprecedented move of solidarity, a total of 40 dedicated individuals who comprised the crew of the movie, including prominent figures like producer Miri Yoon, chose to step forward together to release an official joint statement designed to forcefully correct what they described as completely absurd, fabricated, and false claims. Their unified message painted a fundamentally different picture of the set, stating unequivocally that the director was an incredible, deeply involved leader who treated every single member of the cast and crew with absolute class and respect throughout the entire process. They emphasized that the alleged screaming match was a total work of fiction, affirming that the daily reality of the production was rooted in mutual professional respect rather than the dramatic interpersonal warfare that the public had so eagerly consumed. This powerful defense from the crew highlighted the immense disconnect that often exists between the actual, lived experience of filmmaking and the sensationalized narratives manufactured by a media ecosystem that profits off conflict and division behind the glitz of the red carpets. The personal lives of the central figures continued to evolve in ways that were deeply impacted by the relentless glare of global celebrity and the constant invasion of privacy. The romantic relationship between the director and her pop star lead, which she beautifully described as having been deeply loving, wonderful, and joyful throughout its duration, ultimately came to an end after nearly 2 years of intense public and professional pressure. The final separation was widely understood to be the result of a difficult, mature realization concerning their incompatible lifestyles, driven by the intense demands of his massive global music touring schedule and her deep, unyielding commitment to her family responsibilities in Los Angeles. The director remained fiercely focused on co-parenting her 2 young children, her son Otis Alexander and her daughter Daisy Josephine, whom she shares with her former partner, the acclaimed television comedy star Jason Sudeikis. The emotional ripples of this entire chapter were further felt across the music world when the international pop star released a poignant new song titled Paint by Numbers, which listeners universally interpreted as an introspective reflection on his time with the director. Featuring melancholic lyrics that seemed to directly reference the unique weight of her family life and the painful ironies of their highly scrutinized breakup. Ultimately, the entire saga serves as a profound and sobering cautionary tale about the modern entertainment industry, illustrating how easily the immense effort of hundreds of creative professionals can be completely hijacked by the public's insatiable appetite for personal drama. The project itself, which aimed to deliver a vital, thought-provoking commentary on control, isolation, and gender dynamics, became a mirror to the very societal forces it sought to critique, trapped in a virtual reality of internet speculation and manufactured rivalries. For the heroes of this journey, the director and her cast, the experience was a trial by fire that permanently altered how they navigate their careers, their public personas, and their artistic independence under the glaring, unforgiving spotlight of global fame. As they move forward onto new creative horizons and separate cinematic paths, the story of this tumultuous production remains etched in Hollywood history as a definitive testament to the fragile line between art and reality, reminding us that behind every headline there are real human beings striving to protect their voices, their families, and their creative truths in a world that is always watching.